First time I went out there trying to skate out, I was off balance and I didn't really like it, but I was really determined to try and figure an activity for myself, and hockey just seemed like the next logical thing. And as I kept staying with it and going to practices, and I got to play goalie again, and goalie in hockey was kind of my first love growing up when I started playing. I was a captain in the U.S. Army. 15 May 2012, during a patrol, I stepped on a IED, took my right leg clean off. My left leg was so badly broken, it had to get cut too. Yep.
Captain, we can't thank you enough for your service and sacrifice to our nation. But we also want to commend you for your willingness to come forward. Share with us your story, your experiences in the pursuit of helping our brothers and sisters who have served, continue to serve, and the general community who are going to view this.
Really glad to be here.
I am joined today by my co-host, neuroscientist and Bets and Badges science advisor, Dr. Pamela Seraphine.
I'm looking forward to this conversation and going a little deep into the weeds of the good stuff.
Tell us about who you are, a brief blurb about who you are, what makes Ben.
Leading up to college, before I got serious into lacrosse, I was a big hockey player. In college, I played lacrosse. And then afterwards, I still had that competitive attitude and mindset in the military. And I knew going out of college and figuring out what I was going to branch, I kind of wanted to be, around the best of the best. And it just seemed like the infantry, you had a slot to Ranger School. That seemed like where I was at. And then during my deployment to Iraq in 06 and 07, I had the opportunity to work with a bunch of different special forces teams. And I was like, these guys are like the varsity. I was like, if I'm going to do what we're doing and be deployed and keep doing this, I want to do this mission. And it really interested me because it wasn't just, flying around helicopters at night under night vision and kicking down doors. That's part of it. But there's a lot more that leads up to that. That's more of a chess game and like thinking man's game of how you get to that point. And sometimes you don't even need to get to that point. And that really interested me. And so I think just being a competitive person, having that drive my entire life really made me who I am today, and everything I accomplished during the military. After I got injured, I just refused to quit, refused to get told that, that's it. You're going to be stuck in a wheelchair. And I vividly told them, like, I'm not even exaggerating, like this is bullshit. Listen, I was a college athlete. I was a Green Beret. I understand I have no legs. The wheelchair is going to be part of my life, but I will be up and walking. And if you're not the person to help me, then I'm going to wheel around you. And I wheeled around many people. I fired my first physical therapist at Walter Reed because she was just too soft. And I was like, listen, I get it. I'm like 2 months from injury, but like, I'm ready to go. Like, we got to go. And that's who I am.
That's incredible. What an incredible story, and how inspiring for others. What I think is also amazing about your story is, because I talk a lot about identity, and you kept your identity as an athlete throughout your life. You didn't let that go. And what I see, especially with veterans and first responders, retired, they let go of pieces of their identity and just narrow it so small. And I'm always, you have an expanded identity. You kept that Green Beret and athlete and leader and father and husband. Like, you kept it so strong, and that made a difference. That's changing the structure of your brain. This is a physical change, and it's not so abstract. And you have to be able to constantly expand your identity.
Who was Ben as a child?
We have a joke around special operations that you were basically the Lost Boys, like in Peter Pan, like all these kids that just have not great childhoods growing up. They all end up going into special operations. So maybe there was a little bit of that. I had a good, I don't want to say that I had a horrible childhood. It wasn't like I had an abusive father or anything like that, or a mother. But a divorced family when you're younger sucks. And I moved around a lot, and that sucked. And I think that the one constant that I did have was the brotherhood or the camaraderie or friendship of being on my hockey team. And I'd be at the rink every weekend, Friday night, Saturday night. It's really all I cared about. And, any opportunity to get on the ice, that's what I wanted to do. Wasn't really big into drugs or drinking, or I didn't have any issues like that. I was a pretty good kid for the most part. But for me, I just really enjoyed the sports teams, and that's kind of where I felt drawn to, I guess, like looking for that family connection, but also it gave me that competitive feeling of winning and success and what comes with that.
I guess high school, and then you decided to join the military?
Yeah, so for high school, I actually had the opportunity to go to an all-boys boarding school down in Virginia. Not because I did anything wrong. I didn't steal a car and get sent to a boarding school. But for me, it was offered as an opportunity, and I saw it as a fresh start or just something new to do. So I jumped at it. My uncle had gone to this school. One of my cousins had gone to this school. My cousin was looking at it. So when the opportunity came for me, I was like, okay, yeah, I'd like to do this. That's really around the same time frame that I started to get more into lacrosse. Being there in that setting, all boys boarding, you still had relationships with the girls on the weekends, and I had a girlfriend here and there, but you just focused on sports, athletics, and academics. And I enjoyed it, and once again, being in that dynamic where I think you're going through shared hardship with your friends, it only makes you closer, the bonds, which is something, I'm sure we'll dive in psychologically later on with the military. But I'm still good friends with a lot of my friends from high school, still stay in touch. And I had a great time. I loved it. It was a great launching pad for me to have the ability to play Division I lacrosse, even be recruited by some of the schools that I was being recruited by. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So then you go in the military and you go on to West Point, right? And
Yeah.
literally walk onto the lacrosse team, right?
Yeah, I played lacrosse all 4 years at school. I was a letterman, so I technically started. I obviously got more playing time as I got older. And in fact, funny side story with lacrosse and dealing with adversity. So I played attack in high school, which is basically like a forward position for those that don't know much about the game, and really good. Leading scorer, or had most assists, whatever it was, my senior year. We won a state championship my junior year. I think I was honorable All-State. So I was a really good attackman. I get to West Point, and my freshman and sophomore year, just to get me on the field, they moved me to midfield. But I'm still playing offense. At the beginning of junior year, we have a new coach that came in to be the defensive coordinator, and me and him got along, and I think he just saw me as a very athletic kid, and he wanted to move me to defense as a defensive midi. And I was like, all right, whatever I can do to help the team. Like, I just want to be on the field and I want to play. And if that means I'm now more defensive minded, so be it. I'll do whatever it takes. And it's probably, part of the reason I ended up my senior year winning Unsung Hero Award for the team, just for my individual efforts for the team my senior year.
And then you go on to, I guess, maybe out of order, but you wind up in jump school. And then...
Yeah, something like that. So how it worked for me was I was lucky enough to go to airborne school as a cadet. So I already, in between my sophomore and junior year, I went down to Fort Benning, Georgia, and Columbus, and learned how to fall from planes. After graduation, I went to what's called IOBC. At the time, it's called probably Infantry Bullet now, but IOBC, Infantry Officer Basic Course, where you learn how to be an infantry officer. After that, I attended Ranger School and I started in January of 06 and graduated in April of 06. So I was a Winter Ranger, which means that it was harder. Don't let anyone else tell you different. And then after that, I did one more school at Fort Benning called Mechanized Leader. And then I ended up going down to Fort Hood, Texas to be a mechanized infantry platoon leader, and ended up taking my platoon in 1st Cavalry Division to Iraq from 2006 to 2007. And I was there for 15 months. So I was lucky enough to be held up in the surge. What was supposed to be 12 months turned into 15.
Doctor, I want to get into the challenges that Ben is just skirting over, right? As he's telling his story.
I mean, I'm like, you guys have got to stop and let me in here.
Please jump in, because
Let me step in here and just set the record straight, Ben. I'm not going to analyze you. I'm a neuroscientist. I'm looking for the neuroscience that beneath your story. And what you have just, described is just so exceptional. And what happens is, if someone like me doesn't step in, it'll look like it's mindset, it's mental toughness, very vague, abstract, where you have an exceptional neurobiology that is wired into you very young, the pursuit of excellence when you were young because you were an athlete. And your values were embedded. They're not just abstract words, and that's what people think they are. They're just words that you can just throw around. Oh, I value excellence. I value courage. I value integrity. No, you have to prove to your brain, your brain has to have the evidence that you are actually working towards that. And it's physically embedded in your brain and your nervous system. So as you keep going through your life, you have strengthened this process without knowing what's coming. That's why you embody it. That's what is making you so exceptional and your story so exceptional, because it didn't matter what happened. The evolution of excellence for you, you went through the entire process of building and testing, and then it being disrupted and then adapting. That's exceptional. Most people, they just claim it. They barely build it, barely. And so we throw out terms like mental toughness, like if I can do it, you can do it. If you believe in yourself, anything is possible. No, you earned it. You earned it every single step of the way. And that's what makes you exceptional. And now as a high stakes leader, because your decisions have a high consequence on others still as a leader. So you hold that standard because it's embodied. You can't just wing this stuff. And if we allow you just to tell your story, it'll just seem like you just went from A to Z, and you like suffered along the way. But hey, you're tough enough to put up with it. No, it's so remarkable.
Did you ever think of quitting? And how did you handle that?
So first off, Dr. Pam, I'm going to steal your tagline. I'm going to put it on my resume now. Hardwired for excellence.
Yes. Hey, you should be, just stepping in here, you should be teaching the evolution of excellence because you stand for it. That is you. And people need to hear it. And you're the example of that. So I don't know what you got going on in your life, but I'm like, oh, this is you. This is you
good.
At your
I
core.
like that. The evolution of excellence. I'm going to work on that later. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there was so many times. I'm sure, like, it felt like quitting at times, like selection. I was just there to get selected, like that was why I'm there, because I want to become a Green Beret. It wasn't like, well, we'll try this and see if I like it, and kind of like, just dip my foot in the water. Like I was there to do it. For college, I wanted to play Division I lacrosse. I wanted to play on a competitive team. I wanted to try and win I wanted to be on a team that would try and win a national championship. I didn't just go because I like to, hang out with my friends and throw the ball around. That's always been kind of like my mindset. Listen, there's things that I have like stumbled and haven't been able to finish, but it hasn't stopped me. I've just kind of worked my way around that obstacle and then continue to drive on.
That's my point, is that once you have embodied it, which is what you did all along, your brain will pull you back to that standard no matter what you go through. So it's not the same for other people. They haven't earned it. He earned it. That's the difference, right? You have to earn it. I talked about this the other day about self-respect. You don't just get to claim it. It's earned. And it's very difficult to earn, but once you earn it, nobody can take it from you. But we have this blanket statements and very abstract that you can just you just deserve you deserve self-respect, and you deserve winning at all. It's like, well, no, he's not ever. And I tell you this, Ben, going forward, you're going to have the same. You're always going to want to win, always want to have that thirst for being competitive, because it's who you are, right? That's why it's so inspiring, because you actually just get to be you at this point, and your brain and your body will work to your advantage.
A lot of the stuff that you're talking about, I agree with. A big thing, and going back to growing up, and I guess what was the basis of being hardwired for success was sports, or at least just competition. And for my wife and I, it's really important that our kids play competitive sports because of that reason. Now it's a little bit different, and I think it's kind of disservice because kids start specializing in one sport so younger in life. My son's real big into soccer. My daughter's really big into dance, but both require effort and competition, and it's just not given. And you keep talking about being earned and given, but there's a slogan about being a Green Beret. It's earned, never given, right? And that's just life. If you want to succeed in life, if you want to, whatever success is for you, and back in the day when I had a podcast going, and one of my friends was on there, we were talking about what is success. And I'll always remember what he told me. He said, success is bullshit. He's like, people think it's the car, it's the girl, it's I made all this money, I earned this certificate. He said, that's bullshit. What success is progress. If you can continually progress and move towards your goal. And I think the only way you get there is by learning how to endure. During Ranger School, one of the best pieces of advice I got going into Ranger School, which I carried on later on to hard times and selection, was don't think about anything else but just like what you're doing right now in the moment, and just keep thinking, I just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's it. Don't worry about what you're doing tonight. Don't worry about if you're going to eat tonight. Don't worry about if you're going to sleep tonight. Just left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And just before you know it, it's, you're there.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you've trained your brain to do that. And I'd love to see where you're going, where you're headed, because I don't think that you're just going to stay like this. You must have something on the table that you're working on.
I don't know if I'm ready to let him out of the cage right now, but there
would have to be, though.
Like I like to build. I like to create. I don't like being stagnant. Personally and professionally, and that's part of the reason I left Pam Jets back in September. And I was helped start up the company, so it went from inception as a startup to where we were when I left in September, and we were like almost a $50 million a year gross revenue company. And I loved it. It was great. I learned all about an industry I had no idea about when I first got asked to come on board and help start this company up from a good friend of mine. And I said, listen, all I know is how to jump from planes and drop bombs from planes. I don't really know much about planes. And he's like, no, I just need somebody to help me run the business and grow the business like I've seen here when we were working together at a cybersecurity company at the time. And I enjoyed it because it was something new and different and ambiguous, and I could kind of like choose my own adventure. And like everything else in life, the effort you put into it is kind of what you get out of it tenfold. And I helped the team and grow to where it was. And then it got to a point where, we weren't really growing anymore, didn't really want to expand, trying to figure out something else, and ended up leaving in September to do something else. Right now I'm helping out a good friend of mine who's also a Green Beret, and our current Lieutenant Governor of Florida, Jay Collins, run for governor. So I'm working on the campaign team and trying to get Jay elected to the governor's office. So we'll see what
Wonderful.
life has in store for me after that.
Well, he's very fortunate to have you. I'm telling you, like, you would be in high demand because you, like I said, you've earned this. It's not going anywhere. You're always going to take it to the next level, always, for the rest of your life. I guarantee that's how wired you are for this. So good on him for having you by his side.
Well, I guess it's follow me, right?
Yeah, Rangers lead the way.
Ben, let's talk about, you overcoming what simply others would never even think of doing, right? They would give up on. You're injured catastrophically in combat. You find yourself in a situation you're told you're not going to recover to the level that you have recovered. You tell the doctors that you want to literally grow your bone. That speaks to, again, your wiring, your hard wiring, your resilience, to overcome what others say you can't. And then you become literally patient zero at Walter Reed.
Yeah, so, I got injured in 15 May 2012. And after all the surgeries and recovery piece, which is a whole nother podcast we can get into, that year, that fall, we actually come back down here to Boca Raton, Florida, and we do Thanksgiving with my in-laws. And leading up to that, I'm progressing in the sense of I'm working out again. Obviously, I'm all closed up. I'm trying to learn how to walk, but legs are not staying on my right side because so much of my bone got cut off from the infection and the blast. And I didn't have two full-size long limbs, like some people I saw at the hospital, where they were kind of progressing ahead of me, so to speak, of, if we got injured around the same time, I would see them down in the prosthetics lab also. They get their legs and they're kind of learning how to walk and they're on their way. And for me, I was kind of stuck in neutral because I couldn't get a good fit on my right side. And it was really frustrating. And we're down in Boca for Thanksgiving, November of 2012. And I vividly remember I had these like little legs called shorties, basically, to like practice standing up and working on your core strength and walking around. But I was still in a wheelchair. And I'm trying to walk around and my right leg's popping off and I'm like super frustrated with it. And I tell my wife, what's going on, and I'm venting to her. And I'm like, listen, it's like, it's not the magician, it's the wand. Like, I feel like it's not me. It's like the equipment and like there's a missing piece here and I don't have the answer. And she's like, well, have you talked to any of the doctors? And I'm like, yeah, I've talked to the doctors. Nobody said anything. And Gina and I had a discussion, and it was a impetus for an idea. And that Thanksgiving break, I spent the next like 4 days, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, online researching and becoming a subject matter expert on bone lengthening, osteodistraction as like the technical term, Wolff's Law, which is like the medical term for why the bone will just keep regenerating and regenerating and regenerating. The Lazarev method, after this Russian doctor, Dr. Lazarev, who discovered this process in the 60s as a Soviet doctor working on Cuban soldiers in Angola, recorrecting like massive compound fractures and realizing how the bone will regrow like this. And so I took all this back to the doctors at Walter Reed, and I was like, hey man, like, I'm learning that you can do bone lengthening on like tibs and fibs, like shin bones and other bones. Have you, like, can we do this to my little femur? And they're like, well, we've never done it. It's probably possible. We know about the process. Let me put you in touch with the doctor that I've heard of. And so Gina and I went up to Johns Hopkins up in Baltimore. We were in DC at the time, so only like 45 minutes away. Go up there, sit down with the doctor, and he's like, Ben, I can get you like 2 to 3 inches of bone. And to me, I was like, all right, game changer. That's amazing. And he's like, well, that's the good news. The bad news is 4 times a day, you're going to have to turn screws on this piece of metal that's half in you, half out. You're going to be dealing with infection and you're going to be bedridden. And for me, infection at the time was a big deal because my immune system was just shocked and rocked from all the dirt and bacteria and fungal infections and stuff that I was battling. And so I was like, all right, like what, I'm going to be on antibiotics. I can't work out. I'll do it. But like, is there like another way? Because if there's another way, like just, I'm asking the question. And he said, well, there's a doctor up in Minnesota that uses a non-FDA approved device. And instead of it being half in and half out, like an external fixator, basically what it is if this was, and this is probably about the length of my femur before, if this was my femur, what they would do is they drill into the distal end, insert this device that looks like two AA batteries stacked on top of one another that sits inside my femur. And then they break the femur. It's attached on either side of the break. And then instead of turning the screws, what I would do is they buried a radio receiver up by my hip flexor. And then 4 times a day, I would take a radio transmitter, find the receiver, put on my stethoscope, press the power button to the radio transmitter, and count the turns as it was basically telescoping inside my broken femur. So I went up to Minnesota and met the doctor that explained all that to me. Same thing. He told me he'd get me 2 to 3 inches of bone, which at the time I thought would be a game changer. Long story short, 11 months of lengthening a broken femur, 1 mishaps. I ended up setting 2 medical world records, as he told me. 1 for the shortest stump on an amputee ever lengthened, and 2 was for the most bone regenerated on a human, because instead of regrowing 2 to 3 inches of bone, I ended up regrowing about 5.5 inches of bone on my femur to get myself up and walking. And I always say, talking about this story, it's great. I did it. I got the t-shirt. But for me, what I'm most proud about is because I made myself patient zero, is it became a process for other guys at the hospital that had similar circumstances, but just were not given the right information to like no fault of their own. And they went through the process and they lengthened their femur and they got up and walking and just better quality of life.
And it all ties together because, like I said, if we don't, like when I offer the neuroscience beneath the abstract topics, that's because you're giving it to people so that there's an opportunity for them to use it. The same as you did with your situation. And this lengthening is you do it. That's who you are, because you're giving it so that somebody else can use that same base, right? And that's why it has to come to this where you can step out and say, hey, I'm wired this way. I didn't just arrive here. Like now it looks like, ta-da, look at me. I look healthy, right? And it's like, well, no, there are so many steps that went into place every time you had to go through that process. And then you did it, and that makes it possible. And that's incredible.
So Dr. Pam, there's something that I tell my kids a lot that kind of talks on what you're talking about with it being a process, is that nowadays with social media, one of the biggest injustices of social media is that people focus too much on the trophy and not as much of the grind. And, like I told both my kids, you have to enjoy the grind, because on social media, you see people celebrating, the success thing again, right? The trophy, championship, absolutely, whatever it is, because it's you put it in a 10-second clip online. But what you don't see is the 10 months worth of work that took that person to those 10 seconds of like the little Instagram clip. So yeah, like you have to be able to be comfortable with the grind. You have to like the work. You have to want the work. I mean, I'm sure you take anyone's legs away from them, the first thing they're going to say is like, I want to walk. I'll do whatever it takes to walk. But I don't think everyone wants to go through the necessary steps.
Well, that's what I was saying. And people can claim the value. They can claim it like, oh, I value health. But the amount of things that go on behind closed doors, even for myself as an athlete, people have no idea what it takes behind closed doors, because they just think that you can just, you just arrive there, right? Like I said, you're just like, here I am. So it's so great that you're teaching your kids that, because your kids are going to have different values than you, right?
Yeah.
We hope they have the same. They often have completely different values. However, if they're in alignment with their values, if they work for their values and earn that, they're going to have the results, that excellence, that pursuit of excellence, very similar to yours.
Gina must be a spectacular woman. Your children, your family. How would you describe that base for others who are probably in similar situations where they need, they're lost, they're hurting?
You know, Gina is a rock for me, and she is spectacular. We'll have to make sure to cut this so that way I can send it to her in a video clip as well.
Will do, brother.
No, but all in serious, you know, when I got injured, that was the only person, you know, that I really wanted to talk to was my wife and have her there. And in fact, when in Afghanistan at point of injury, when I was starting to slip into the abyss and I thought I was dead, I cried out. I thought I cried out loud, like some sort of movie, you know, sorry, Gina. So that way, at least they could, you know, tell my wife that was the last thing I said, but it was only mentally because I was totally incapacitated and just gurgling. But yeah, Gina is a huge support system for me. Communicative, I guess. She'll probably tell you I'm not as good of a communicator as I think I am, but yeah, I mean, we get along great. I just, you know, we work as a team. I think it's still that team dynamic, especially with the kids and everything else we're doing in life. And I think it's important when people are going through, you know, these type of hardships. I can't imagine going through everything I did without her there. So, you know, I can't imagine or fathom how tough it must be for somebody to do everything that I did, like on your own. Like, I don't think that's really even a possibility. You know, you just, I couldn't, I don't know how you do it. Like, I just have no clue.
I think it's really important to touch on this topic because I think there's a spiritual side, and I don't know what your views on that, but she's feeding your soul. Let me tell you that. You can tell in that moment when you were describing this with your kids, that's what your soul went to. That's what is holding you. And you're right. There's so many people that don't have that. And that's another piece of your story that we can't take everybody's the same. It's like, well, no, there's endless amount of people will never even experience an ounce of the love you have from her. And so we have to take that into consideration and give respect and honor her for that, and your kids and whoever is in your support circle, because that is really a huge part of how you're taking care of yourself and able to sustain this over time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because when I was basically dying, you know, bleeding out, that's kind of where my mind went. There's some religious, spiritual stuff that I experienced as well, but what it immediately drew me to and I focused on was Peyton and Gina. And I just remember saying their names over and over again, and I was focused on them. And you know, at the time, I was elsewhere, but it felt like I was living in this photo that I had, this 3x5 picture of the two of them, and that's all I was focused on, and I just refused to like let go of that. And you know what you just said about like my soul immediately went to her, but it was her and Peyton at that moment. Marquesa wasn't born yet. I definitely think that's no one has said that before, and I haven't been able to like figure that out yet. But I guess that's the case, is that my soul went immediately to my wife and my son, and it wasn't ready to leave yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I heard your story, I was like, oh, I can see your soul for one thing. And then I'm like, oh, I can see how this has been created and how beautiful. Like, it's freaking so spectacular. For people that don't have somebody, including myself, that doesn't have the soulmate, you have this exceptional opportunity to build this life. That's why I'm saying, like, I would bet money on you, whatever you turn to is going to work, because you have this structure in your place and your soul is being fed.
You know, first off, thanks for having me on, and you know, would love to continue the conversation with you guys, helping me go back, Dr. Pam, and psychoanalyze myself of moments I've had.
Oh, my pleasure.
Today on Bets and Badges, we've had the pleasure of introducing to you Captain Ben Harrow. We want to thank the Millers, Grant, Michael Miller, the community news team, our producer behind the scene, Priscilla Cordova, and you, the public. Thank you.